Have you ever felt like something invisible is holding you back? Like no matter how hard you try, success, happiness, or confidence always seem just out of reach? Maybe you've convinced yourself that you're not talented enough, not lucky enough, or that some people are just meant for more, while you're destined for less. If any of this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Millions of people live with beliefs that quietly sabotage them every single day, shaping their choices, limiting their potential, and trapping them in lives far smaller than they deserve. But here's the truth: these beliefs are not reality. They are illusions, mental barriers that feel real only because they've been reinforced over time. And once you recognize them for what they are, you can break free. The mind is powerful, but it is also deeply programmable. From childhood, we absorb messages from parents, teachers, culture, and even past experiences. If you were told you weren't good enough, weren't smart enough, or shouldn't aim too high, those words didn't just disappear. They became part of your subconscious, shaping how you see yourself and what you believe is possible. Psychology calls this cognitive conditioning, a process where repeated messages become internalized truths, whether they're accurate or not. And when these messages are negative, they turn into toxic beliefs that silently dictate the course of your life. Imagine a child who's told over and over that they're not creative. Every time they try to draw, write, or express an idea, someone dismisses it or laughs. Eventually, that child stops trying. They grow up believing they simply don't have creativity in them. But the truth is, the belief was never real, it was learned. The same happens with confidence, success, love, and happiness. When you tell yourself something long enough, your brain stops questioning it. It becomes a script you live by, one that keeps you small, hesitant, and afraid to challenge the limits you've unknowingly accepted. But here's where it gets even more dangerous. Once a belief is planted, your mind will look for proof that it's true. This is known as confirmation bias, a psychological phenomenon where we subconsciously seek out evidence that supports what we already believe. If you believe you're not worthy of success, you'll focus on your failures and overlook your wins. If you believe relationships always end in heartbreak, you'll ignore the good moments and fixate on the bad. Your mind, without realizing it, becomes your own worst enemy, constantly reinforcing the very things that are hurting you. The problem isn't that life is against you. It's that your beliefs are filtering reality in a way that makes you see only obstacles instead of opportunities. And this is exactly how toxic beliefs ruin lives. Not because they're true, but because they convince you they are. They make you settle for less, accept mediocrity, and believe that change is out of reach. But the moment you recognize that these beliefs are not facts, everything shifts. You start questioning them, breaking them down, and replacing them with something better. You stop letting an old script control your future and start rewriting the story the way you want it to be. So ask yourself, what limiting beliefs have you been carrying? Where did they come from? More importantly, are you willing to challenge them? Because what you believe shapes your life, and if you want a different future, it starts with breaking free from the invisible chains holding you back. Today, we're going to expose 4 of the most toxic beliefs that may be silently ruining your life, and more importantly, we're going to show you how to break them for good. How many times have you looked at someone successful and thought, they have something I don't? Maybe you've convinced yourself that confidence, talent, or success belong to other people, not you. Deep down, you feel like no matter how much you try, you're not quite good enough. This belief is one of the most destructive forces in a person's life. It's silent, but it's relentless. It keeps you playing small, doubting yourself, and hesitating when you should be moving forward. And the worst part? It's a lie. The idea that you're not good enough isn't something you were born with, it's something you learned. Maybe it started in childhood. Parents who expected perfection, teachers who dismissed your efforts, or moments of failure that made you question your abilities. Maybe it came later, rejection, comparison, a mistake that felt too big to recover from. Whatever the source, at some point you internalized the belief that you weren't enough, and from that moment on it became a filter through which you saw yourself. But here's what most people don't realize: just because a belief feels true, doesn't mean it is. Psychologists call this imposter syndrome, the persistent feeling that you're not as capable as others think you are, that you're always one step away from being exposed as a fraud. And it doesn't just affect people who struggle. Even the most successful individuals admit to feeling this way. Studies show that high achievers, from CEOs to artists to world-class athletes, often battle the fear that they're not truly deserving of their success. Why? Because the mind clings to old beliefs, even when reality proves otherwise. Think about it. How many times have you accomplished something but brushed it off as luck? How often do you downplay your own strengths while easily recognizing them in others? That's not because you lack talent or value, it's because your mind is wired to protect your beliefs even if they're wrong. This is called negative self-bias, a psychological tendency to focus more on our weaknesses than our strengths. It's why one criticism hurts more than 10 compliments. It's why one failure feels more defining than 100 successes. And unless you challenge this pattern, it will keep repeating. The good news? You can rewire your thinking. The first step is awareness. Recognizing that "I'm not good enough" is not a fact but a conditioned belief. The next step is proof. Start keeping track of every win, no matter how small. Write them down, read them back. Your mind needs evidence to rewrite its script. When self-doubt creeps in, ask yourself, where is the proof that I'm not good enough? More often than not, you'll realize there isn't any. Only old fears trying to hold you back. Another powerful technique is shifting your perspective. Instead of seeing yourself as someone struggling to become worthy, recognize that you already are. Success isn't about proving yourself. It's about embracing what you already bring to the table. The people you admire, the ones who seem so confident and capable, they don't have something magical that you don't. They just refuse to let doubt control their actions. They feel fear, but they move forward anyway. And that's the real difference. Not talent, not luck, but the willingness to believe in themselves despite uncertainty. So here's the challenge. Stop waiting for the day you feel good enough and start acting like you are. Confidence doesn't come first, action does. You don't become great by believing you already are. You become great by showing up, trying, failing, learning, and proving to yourself that you're more capable than you ever imagined. And if you can do that, if you can silence the lie that's been holding you back, you will realize that you were never missing anything to begin with. You were enough all along. How often do you find yourself waiting for the perfect moment, the right time to start that project, to take that risk to finally go after the life you want? Maybe you tell yourself you'll start when you're more confident, when you have more experience, when the circumstances are just right. But somehow that perfect moment never comes. Days turn into months, months into years, and the dream, the goal, the change you once felt so passionate about fades into the background. This is the trap of perfectionism, the toxic belief that you must be fully prepared before you begin. And the truth is, it's one of the biggest lies your mind will ever tell you. Perfectionism isn't about having high standards. It's about fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough. The idea that everything must be flawless before you take action is just an excuse your mind creates to keep you safe. Because as long as you're preparing, planning, researching, waiting, you're not actually risking anything. You're not putting yourself in a position to fail. But here's the catch. You're also not putting yourself in a position to succeed. You're stuck in a loop, mistaking hesitation for wisdom, when in reality, it's just avoidance dressed up as strategy. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis, the state of overthinking a decision to the point where no action is taken at all. And the irony? The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to start. Your mind convinces you that since you've delayed this long, you need to be even more prepared to make up for lost time. You tell yourself you need just one more course, one more certification, one more sign from the universe. But in reality, the only thing standing between you and progress is the willingness to start before you feel ready. Think about the people who have achieved extraordinary things. Do you think they all started when they were perfectly prepared? No. They started when they were uncertain, when they had doubts, when they didn't have all the answers. The difference is, they understood that progress creates confidence, not the other way around. Confidence isn't something you magically acquire by waiting. It's something you build by taking action despite your doubts. But perfectionists don't allow themselves that opportunity. They live by an impossible standard where anything less than flawless feels like failure. This mindset is not only exhausting, but it's also destructive. It leads to procrastination, stress, and even self-sabotage. Studies show that perfectionists are more likely to struggle with anxiety and depression because their self-worth is tied to unrealistic expectation. And the cruel irony? Perfectionism doesn't make you more successful, it makes you more stuck. Because while you're busy obsessing over doing everything right, others are out there actually learning, improving, moving forward while you remain in the same place. The only way to break free is to shift your mindset. Instead of striving for perfection, strive for progress. Accept that mistakes are not proof of failure, they are proof of effort. Every expert was once a beginner. Every master once made embarrassing mistakes. No one gets it right the first time, or the second, or even the 10th. But those who succeed understand that perfection is an illusion and waiting for it only leads to regret. So ask yourself, what have you been putting off because you don't feel ready? What have you been telling yourself you need to perfect before you can begin? The truth is, you don't need more time, more knowledge, or more validation. You just need to start. Because action, not waiting, is what leads to success. The sooner you let go of perfection, the sooner you'll realize that good enough is all you ever needed to be. How often do you catch yourself saying, "This is just the way I am"? Maybe you believe you're naturally shy, bad with money, not creative, or incapable of change. Maybe you've convinced yourself that certain dreams are out of reach because you weren't born with the right talents or personality. This belief, that who you are today is set in stone, is one of the most damaging illusions the mind creates. It keeps you stuck, repeating the same patterns, making the same mistakes, living the same life on a loop. But the truth? You are not fixed. You are not limited. You are not bound by who you were yesterday. Psychologists call this a fixed mindset, the belief that your intelligence, abilities, and personality traits are set in place, like a permanent label stamped on you at birth. And if you believe this, it becomes your reality. If you think you're bad at something, you avoid it. If you think you can't improve, you don't try. Every struggle becomes proof that you're not meant to succeed. Every setback confirms your worst fears. But here's what most people don't realize. None of this is based on truth. It's simply the result of conditioning. The opposite of a fixed mindset is a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed, that intelligence is flexible, that failure is not a verdict but a lesson. And science proves this to be true. Research in neuroplasticity shows that the brain is constantly rewiring itself. Every time you learn something new, every time you push yourself past discomfort, your brain physically changes. New neural pathways form, old limiting beliefs weaken. You are never stuck, you are simply reinforcing whatever you believe to be true. Think about the last time you struggled with something. Maybe you tried learning a skill and gave up because it felt too hard. Or maybe you assumed you weren't good at something because you failed once. But consider this, what if you had kept going? What if instead of seeing failure as proof of your limitations, you saw it as part of the process? That's what separates those who succeed from those who don't. It's not talent, it's not intelligence, it's the belief that effort leads to improvement. The world's most successful people weren't born with something you don't have. They simply refused to accept their limitations as permanent. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Einstein was told he wasn't smart enough. Oprah was fired from her first job as a news anchor. If they had believed they were fixed, they never would have reached their full potential. But they didn't let failure define them. They let it refine them. And that's the key difference. If you've been living with the belief that you can't change, it's time to challenge that thought. Start by questioning it. Who told you this? Where is the proof? More often than not, you'll realize these beliefs aren't facts. They're just stories you've been telling yourself for years. And the good news? You can rewrite them. Start small. Push yourself in ways that challenge your old assumptions. If you think you're bad at something, do it anyway. If you believe you can't improve, prove yourself wrong. Growth isn't comfortable. It requires stepping into the unknown, making mistakes, feeling awkward, struggling before you succeed. But that's how transformation happens. The only thing truly stopping you is the belief that you can't change, and the moment you let go of that lie, everything becomes possible. How many times have you caught yourself thinking, "I'll be happy when"? Maybe you believe you'll finally feel fulfilled when you get that promotion, find the right relationship, or achieve a certain level of success. Maybe you tell yourself that happiness is waiting for you somewhere in the future, once everything falls into place, once all the struggles are over, once you've reached your goals. But what if that belief is the very thing keeping you from feeling happy now? This is the toxic trap of conditional happiness, the idea that your joy, your peace, your sense of worth are all tied to external achievements, that happiness is something to be earned, not something you can access right now. And the problem with this mindset? It creates an endless cycle of dissatisfaction because every time you reach one goal, another appears. Every time you achieve something you thought would make you happy, the feeling is temporary and you find yourself chasing the next thing. It's like climbing a mountain only to realize there's always another peak in the distance. Psychologists call this the arrival fallacy, the mistaken belief that reaching a milestone will bring lasting happiness. Studies have shown that even major life achievements, landing a dream job, winning the lottery, finding love, only bring a short-term boost in happiness. After a while, people return to their baseline level of contentment. Why? Because external achievements don't create deep, lasting fulfillment. They only provide momentary highs. And yet, we keep chasing. We keep postponing joy, believing that our happiness is on the other side of more. More money, more success, more recognition. But the harsh truth? If you can't find happiness in the present, you won't find it in the future. If you're always waiting for the next thing, you'll spend your entire life chasing a feeling that remains just out of reach. Think about it. How many times have you looked back and realized that a phase of life you once took for granted was actually a beautiful time? How often do we miss the present moment because we're too focused on what's next? This is the cost of believing that happiness is somewhere out there. It robs you of the joy that already exists right here. So how do you break free? The key is shifting your focus. Instead of treating happiness as a destination, learn to cultivate it in the present. Practice gratitude, not just as a concept, but as a daily habit. Studies show that people who regularly focus on what they're grateful for experience greater overall happiness, not because their lives are perfect, but because their perspective is different. They choose to see what's good instead of always searching for what's missing. Another powerful shift is learning to find joy in the process, not just the outcome. When you focus only on results, you overlook the beauty of the journey. But true fulfillment comes from growth, from effort, from becoming the kind of person who is engaged in life, not just racing to the finish line. Ask yourself, what are you postponing joy for? What if you decided to stop waiting and started living as if happiness wasn't something you had to earn, but something you could access right now? Because the truth is, happiness is never out there. It's only ever here, in the way you choose to experience your life today. How often do you find yourself worrying about what other people think? Maybe you hesitate before speaking your mind, afraid of being judged. Maybe you adjust your personality, your choices, even your dreams to fit into what you believe others will approve of. You tell yourself that their opinions matter, that their approval is a measure of your worth. But here's the truth. The moment you start living for validation, you stop living for yourself. This toxic belief that your worth is determined by what others think is one of the most crippling mental traps you can fall into. It turns your life into a performance. Instead of making decisions based on what you want, you filter everything through the imagined judgment of others. Instead of embracing who you are, you shrink yourself to fit their expectations, and in the process you lose touch with your own voice, your own desires, your own sense of self. Psychologists call this external validation dependency, the habit of seeking approval from others as a way to feel good about yourself. And the problem with this? It puts your happiness in someone else's hands. When you rely on others to tell you that you're good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, you give them power over your emotions. Their praise lifts you up, but their criticism tears you down. And worst of all, it never truly satisfies. No amount of external validation can create real, lasting self-worth, because deep down, if you don't believe in yourself, no amount of applause will ever be enough. Think about it. How many times have you held back because you were afraid of judgment? How many opportunities have you missed, ideas you've buried, or dreams you've abandoned just to avoid criticism? And for what? For the approval of people who in the grand scheme of your life won't even matter? Because here's a hard truth. Most people aren't thinking about you as much as you think they are. They're too busy worrying about their own insecurities, their own self-esteem, their own fears of judgment. And even if they are judging you, so what? Their opinions don't define you, your actions do. Some of the most successful, happiest people in the world got there by ignoring what others thought. Imagine if Steve Jobs had been afraid of criticism. If Elon Musk had let doubt stop him, if J.K. Rowling had given up after being rejected multiple times. These people didn't succeed because they were liked by everyone. They succeeded because they believed in themselves despite the judgment. So how do you break free? It starts with shifting your focus. Instead of asking, "What will people think?" ask, "What do I think?" Instead of seeking approval, seek authenticity. Start making choices based on what genuinely fulfills you, not what impresses others. This doesn't mean you have to ignore all feedback. Constructive criticism can help you grow, but there's a difference between learning from others and living for them. Build self-agency. Every time you catch yourself looking for approval, pause. Remind yourself that you don't need permission to be who you are. The more you practice self-acceptance, the less power other people's opinions will have over you, and most importantly, realize that no matter how hard you try, you will never please everyone. Some people will misunderstand you, some will judge you, some will never like you, no matter what you do. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, the only opinion that truly matters is the one you have of yourself. There's a voice inside your head that whispers doubts every time you think about taking a risk. It reminds you of past failures, plays out worst-case scenarios, and convinces you that you're not ready, not good enough, not capable. It keeps you stuck, frozen in hesitation, trapped in a cycle of overthinking. And the most dangerous part? This voice feels so real that you believe it. You mistake it for wisdom when in reality it's fear disguised as logic. This toxic belief that you must feel confident before you take action is one of the biggest lies that hold people back. It tricks you into thinking that once you feel ready, then you'll go after what you want. That once you have enough courage, then you'll finally take that leap. But here's the truth. Confidence doesn't come before action. It comes because of action. The people who seem fearless, who take bold steps, who create the life they want, they weren't born with more confidence than you. They just learned a powerful secret. Action creates confidence, not the other way around. Psychologists call this the confidence-competence loop. The more you take action, the more competent you become. The more competent you become, the more confident you feel. But if you wait to feel ready before you start, you'll be waiting forever. Because confidence doesn't just appear out of nowhere, it's something you build through experience. You weren't confident the first time you rode a bike, spoke in public, or learned a new skill. But you pushed through, did it anyway, and eventually confidence followed. Think about the opportunities you've let slip away because you didn't feel ready, the chances you didn't take, the dreams you postponed, and ask yourself, how much longer are you willing to wait? Because the harsh reality is, waiting doesn't bring confidence. It just brings regret. What if you stopped waiting and started doing? What if, instead of asking, "Do I feel ready?" you asked, "What's one small step I can take today?" Because confidence is built in motion. The more you act, the more fear loses its grip. The more you prove to yourself that you are capable, and before you know it, the thing that once scared you becomes second nature. You don't need to feel ready to begin. You just need to begin. Take the leap. Start before you're ready. Trust that confidence will meet you on the other side of action. Because the only way to truly believe in yourself is to prove to yourself, through action, that you can. You tell yourself that happiness will come one day, when you finally get that promotion, when you find the right partner, when you have more money, more success, more recognition. You believe that once you achieve a certain milestone, then you'll finally feel fulfilled, at peace, truly happy. But the reality? That moment never comes, not the way you expect, because every time you reach one goal, a new one appears. Every time you check a box, another task takes its place, and happiness? It stays just out of reach, dangling like a carrot in front of you. This toxic belief that happiness is something you'll experience in the future is one of the most common illusions that keep people trapped. It makes you believe that life is a waiting game, that joy is something you have to earn through achievement. But this mindset is a trap, because if happiness is always tied to a future outcome, You'll spend your entire life chasing it, and no matter how much you accomplish, you'll always feel like there's something missing. Psychologists refer to this as the arrival fallacy. The false belief that reaching a goal will bring lasting happiness. Research has shown that while achieving a goal can give you a temporary boost of joy, the feeling fades quickly. Why? Because the human brain adapts. It recalibrates. What once seemed like a major milestone quickly becomes the new normal, and so the cycle continues. You push harder, thinking that this time the achievement will be enough, but it never is. Think about it. How often have you thought, "I'll be happy when," and when you finally got what you wanted, how long did that happiness last? Days? Weeks? Maybe a few months? Then, before you even realized it, you were already fixated on the next goal, and the happiness you expected, it never became permanent. So how do you break free? It starts with a simple but powerful shift. Stop postponing happiness. Stop making it conditional. Instead of telling yourself that joy will come one day, start finding it now, because the truth is, happiness isn't waiting for you in the future. It's something you create in the present. This doesn't mean you should stop striving for success. It means you should stop believing that success is the key to happiness. True fulfillment comes from learning to appreciate where you are while working toward where you want to be. It's about recognizing that joy isn't found in a finish line, it's found in the journey. So take a moment, breathe, look around, appreciate the small things, the moments of laughter, the quiet victories, the beauty in ordinary days. Because if you don't learn to be happy with what you have now, you won't be happy, no matter how much you achieve. Happiness isn't a destination, it's a mindset, and the sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll truly start living. You've been told that failure is something to avoid, something to fear. Since childhood, you've been conditioned to believe that making mistakes means you're not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough. You've been trained to seek perfection, to play it safe, to avoid risks because failure feels like proof of your inadequacy. And so, you hesitate, you hold back, you stay in your comfort zone, afraid that if you fail it will mean something about you. But here's the truth. Failure is not the enemy. The real danger is believing that failure defines you, because this toxic belief, the idea that failing makes you a failure, is one of the biggest lies that holds people back from success, growth, and fulfillment. It convinces you that mistakes should be feared instead of embraced. But in reality, failure isn't a reflection of your worth. It's proof that you're trying, learning, evolving. Psychologists call this fixed mindset vs. growth mindset. When you have a fixed mindset, you see failure as a dead end, a confirmation that you're not talented enough, smart enough, or capable enough. But when you have a growth mindset, you see failure for what it really is, a stepping stone, a necessary part of progress, a sign that you're pushing your limits and expanding what's possible. The most successful people in the world, the innovators, the leaders, the game changers, they aren't successful because they never failed. They're successful because they failed, repeatedly. And instead of letting those failures define them, they used them as fuel. Think about it. How many times have you stopped yourself from taking action because you were afraid of failing? How many dreams have you put on hold because the thought of messing up felt unbearable? And what has that hesitation cost you? Because every time you avoid failure, you also avoid growth. You avoid opportunities. You avoid the chance to build resilience, to gain wisdom, to become stronger than before. But what if you started seeing failure differently? What if instead of fearing it, you embraced it? What if you understood that every mistake carries a lesson? Every setback is a setup for a comeback, and every failure is just part of the journey to success. Because the truth is, the only real failure is never trying at all. The only real loss is staying stuck in fear while life moves forward without you. So shift your mindset. Stop making failure personal. See it as data, as feedback, as a necessary part of mastery. Because if you avoid failure, you avoid success. If you never risk falling, you'll never learn to fly. And if you wait for certainty, for perfection, for guarantees, you'll spend your whole life waiting instead of living. The people who win in life aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who fail, learn, adapt, and keep going. Be one of those people. Take the risk, make the mistake, and remember, every failure brings you one step closer to the life you're meant to live. You've spent years carrying beliefs that weren't yours to hold. ideas that were planted in your mind before you had the awareness to question them. You were told who you should be, what you should do, how you should live, and without realizing it, you accepted those beliefs as truth. But now you see the weight they carry. You feel how they've shaped your choices, your confidence, your happiness. And you're beginning to ask the most powerful question of all. What if none of this is true? What if the limits you believe in aren't real? What if the fears that hold you back are just illusions? What if you are far more capable, far more worthy, far more powerful than you ever allowed yourself to believe? Because here's the truth. Most of what's stopping you isn't reality. It's the story you've been telling yourself, and that story can change. Psychologists refer to this as cognitive restructuring, the ability to reframe and rewrite the beliefs that shape our reality. Because beliefs are not facts, they are perspectives, and perspectives can be shifted, challenged, replaced. But first, you have to be willing to question everything you thought you knew. You have to recognize that just because you've believed something for years doesn't mean it's true. Just because fear whispers that you're not good enough doesn't mean you aren't. And just because the past conditioned you to think a certain way doesn't mean you have to stay trapped in that mindset. So the real question is, are you ready to break free? Are you ready to stop living in the shadow of toxic beliefs and step into the reality of your full potential? Because that's the choice in front of you. You can continue carrying the weight of false narratives, or you can drop them. You can continue fearing failure, or you can embrace it. You can keep postponing happiness, or you can start creating it now. No one else can do this for you. No one else can decide to challenge the thoughts that hold you back. But the moment you do, everything shifts. Because once you see the illusion for what it is, it loses its power over you. Once you recognize that the only thing standing between you and the life you want is your own belief system, you realize you've been free all along. So start today. Start questioning. Start rewriting. Start stepping into the version of yourself that isn't weighed down by fear, doubt, or limitation, because you were never meant to live a life ruled by toxic beliefs. You were meant to break them, to rise beyond them, to create a reality that is yours, not one shaped by old fears and outdated narratives. And when you do, when you finally let go of everything that has been holding you back, that's when life truly begins.